I recently had a trigger finger on my pinky finger. I think it's gone now. I still notice it a bit sometimes. You probably don't see it anymore. But if not for this experience, I would have never known what a trigger finger was. So in this video, I just want to share what my experience with a trigger finger was or is, and just share basically what I have learned about the trigger finger so far. So a couple of weeks ago, I woke up and I noticed an interesting feeling with my pinky finger. There was this feeling where when I try to close it, it gets locked. It's like it's going like this and then it gets locked. And then when I try to open it, it gets like open in such a force. And it started as a joke for me. I also felt like, oh, my finger can do this. That sounds really interesting. But then I thought, oh, is this a problem I should be paying attention to? So I uploaded this on my Instagram, and from one of the stories I got, this is a trigger finger, and I felt, what exactly is a trigger finger? And from my research, I got to see that a trigger finger is something that can start really small, but it can become a huge problem such that you might not be able to straighten your finger anymore because it is really locked here. And then at that point, you probably need surgery on your finger. Well, I didn't want that, so I reached out to a doctor, a plastic surgeon. I actually reached out for a separate other reason, which I'll probably make a video about. But as part of my appointment, I also asked about the trigger finger, and then they explained what the trigger finger was. And they also asked me questions like what caused it. So they asked, have you been lifting heavy stuff recently? I've been going to the gym, lifting heavy stuff, but apart from what I do at the gym, I don't do anything else. And then they also asked if I had diabetes, because from what I read online, diabetes is also one of the causes. As at then, I thought I didn't have diabetes, but I've also gone to meet my GP, schedule an appointment for my blood check, and in a few weeks I would learn if I actually have diabetes. I really hope I don't. But what I also read online is that the trigger finger is something that also just starts on its own. So what exactly is a trigger finger? There was a way the plastic surgeon explained it for me, which I can't really remember a lot of medical terms, but I have this resource on Mayo Clinic or Mayo Clinic, I'm not sure what it is, and I think it explains what trigger finger is pretty well. Trigger finger makes the finger get stuck in a bent position. It may straighten suddenly with a snap. The finger is most often affected at the ring finger and the top, but the condition can affect any finger. In my case, it affected my pinky finger. The trigger finger happens when the tendon that controls that finger can't glide smoothly in the sheath that surrounds it. When we scroll below, the symptoms is the finger stiffness, particularly in the morning. I think in the morning I even get less of the stiffness, and I get the stiffness more later during the day. A popping or clicking sensation as the finger moves here. Whenever I do this, it feels like a pop or click. I don't know which is the pop or the click. Tenderness or a bump in the palm at the base of the affected finger. Yeah, so at this point here, I also felt a bump, like a swelling, and as we move further, you would see what that swelling might be. Finger catching or locking in the bent position, which suddenly pops straight. Finger locked in the bent position. I think this is in worst case where it is actually locked and then you can't straighten your finger anymore. If we come to this diagram here, so you have the tendon in your finger and you have the tendon sheath. I think that's how you pronounce it. And what happens is you have this nodule here, which is the swelling or inflammation, as the doctors would probably call it. And when this builds up, it now becomes a struggle for the tendon to go under the sheath. Where my finger is like this, then the inflammation is just before the sheath. And then when I try to straighten my finger, you can imagine that this bump here basically tries to squeeze into the sheath. And so that's why it goes pop. And then when I want to bring it out too, because this is really tight here, then you have this, and then it basically comes like pop. If you read the description here, trigger finger happens when the tendon that controls our finger can't glide smoothly in the sheath that surrounds it. This may occur if part of the tendon sheath becomes swollen or if a small lump forms. This lump is called a nodule. Well, this is the first time I'm actually knowing it has a name. I always think of it as just a swelling or inflammation. So yeah, this is basically what a trigger finger is, and you can go online to learn more about it, but this is the basic idea. I think you can get even more medical in this, but that's not my field, so I don't even want to try. So when it comes to the treatment, there are various ways that you can approach this. If we check this guide here, the treatment can include splinting, steroid injections, or surgery. So far I have done the splinting and the steroid injections, but I haven't done the surgery, and I don't think I would have to because now it feels fine. It still locks a tiny bit, I feel it, but you probably don't see it on the camera. So first, for the splinting, I met my physiotherapist and also shared the same thing with them. Where is my splint again? Yep, it's just here. So she gave me this splint to put on my finger, and the goal of this splint is so that I can be able to, well, actually before this splint she gave me something else which let me go look for it. Yep, I found it. So before this splint, she gave me this, and basically the idea here is so that I can bend this finger like this, and when I'm bending it here, because this place is sort of blocked, I don't get that trigger or that pop and click. So then I can do this. So this way, well, from what I understand, it would help that swelling to reduce since I'm not putting pressure on the swelling, but then I can still do things like this with my finger. So I put this mostly on during the day. So what I observed is because this place is bending also, that's when I get the trigger. But if this place is like this, not moving, then I don't get the trigger if I move this. So this was the first thing she gave me. Then she gave me this other one. So this one I can't even bend it at all. So this one just keeps the finger more straight so that I am not focusing on bending the finger. And this is what I would mostly use in the night when I want to sleep so that I'm not disturbing the finger. But this is the one I can use during the day so that I can still bend the finger and do stuff. So that is the first part, the splinting, but that wasn't working. 3 weeks later, I noticed I still had the trigger finger. And then that was when I went to the steroid injection. Well, I remember it was an injection, and I think the doctor said something like steroid. So I think that's the injection they gave. But I think the way this injection works, from what I understand, is that swelling. Basically, the goal of the injection is to bust that swelling. I don't know if bust is the right medical term. And from what the doctor said, usually one injection is enough, but sometimes you need to come for another injection. But then when you get to a point where injections are not working for you, then that is when you go to a surgery where they would open the finger and then manually bust whatever they need to bust, or open the sheet more so that it can accommodate the tendon, or again, all these medical terms. I didn't want surgery and I've only had one injection so far. And I remember when I was given the injection, this finger felt so full. It felt so, it wasn't really heavy, but it gave that weird feeling of being heavy, like they just added more blood or more things into the finger. So even bending the finger was a very funny feeling. I remember just bending the finger and I was just laughing because it was so weird. But I think after a day, it felt less weird. I think 3 days later, I still noticed the trigger finger, but now I don't notice it anymore. And you probably also don't notice it. I still feel it a tiny bit like it's still there, but it really feels like it's no longer there. Is there anything in my notes I wanted to share again? Okay, that's all I had in my notes to share. So that has been my experience with a trigger finger, and maybe you didn't know before, but this is what a trigger finger is. So if you have something like this, I would recommend that you don't just watch it, because sometimes it can go on its own, but I would recommend that you actually take actions instead of just watching it. From the videos I saw online, before you go for splinting, you can also apply other approaches, like maybe massaging this place here. So for this finger, the swelling is here. If it's this finger, the swelling is probably somewhere here. So you can massage it, bend it more, straighten it. There were a couple of those things I saw online which I also tried for myself, and it didn't work before I went to the splinting approach. So I would recommend that you seek immediate medical attention so that it doesn't get to the point where you have to go for surgery. And coming back to the causes again, this could just happen just because your body wants it to happen, or it could also be because you have diabetes. Or I think part of this website also says, yeah, if you have diabetes, low thyroid function, or rheumatoid arthritis. Maybe you have one of these and that's why the trigger finger comes up. So if you have something like this is also a time where you can check your blood if you have diabetes or for these other causes. I think it's just a good time to ensure your body is in good state. That's it about trigger finger. That's what I've learned so far. That's my experience so far. I hope you learned something. I hope you don't ever have a trigger finger, but if you do, I hope that the things I've shared in this video helps. I also want to make more videos like this where I just share the random things I learn, either in my life, my health, or whatever. So if you're interested in things like this, please give this video a subscribe, like it, and share it for anybody you know who may have a trigger finger. And also, if you've experienced a trigger finger before, let me know what your experience was like in the comments. Maybe somebody else might find it helpful. All right, see you in my next video.